Welcome to the Agent Bridge podcast. We're your hosts, Brandon Baca.
And I'm Marl Hessen.
The Agent Bridge is the proven path to real estate success without the burnout. All right, episode 7, I believe. We kind of released the last episode we did without much fanfare, I think largely because it was sort of maybe out of sync with our series, but that's okay. Go back and listen to it. We've got some exciting stuff that we've got going on at the Agent Bridge. If you haven't listened to Becoming a Recession-Proof Realtor, listen to that. It's a great one. By the way, I want to say this on the podcast so that RL has to do it. So behind me, there's nothing behind me. He's got the cool background. I don't have the cool background. So he's going to put a neon, the Agent Bridge sign back behind me. So I'm saying it on the podcast, so now he has to do it.
Now I have to do it.
Yeah. So, Thanksgiving break would be a great time to knock that out.
To give you that gift.
Yeah, thanks.
We need to go look on Etsy and find that. If anybody knows somebody who makes neon signs on Etsy,
Yeah.
send them my way.
All right. So this next part in the series, we're gonna talk about, I think we talked about, your first 30 days as a real estate agent, getting things off the ground, getting things going. And so now we're going to talk about confidence in your follow-up process, or confidence in in how you follow up with people. And this is sort of the process of conversion, right? How do we go from first appointment, right? So, in those scripting that we talked about before, it's like, how do we go from setting the appointment to following up appropriately to getting them to either list or use you as their realtor? And I think before we even get into that, one of the key things that you have to understand is that out of 10 people, 8.7 people are going to use a realtor. So almost 9 out of 10 are going to use a realtor in this process. So it's not if they're going to use a realtor, it's who are they going to use. And if you can become really good at your follow-up process, you will become that realtor.
Yeah. And we talked about this on the other podcasts. It's not just selling them. It's, it's becoming a resource, and we'll get into that. But
yeah, but it's just sort of understanding. It's like they're going to go with the person who's top of mind and who's presented themselves as the professional. Yes. And one of the things that we were talking about in preparation is like the sort of friend thing. Because I think a lot of realtors get scared off by, hey, I'm just going to use my friend. But I can't tell you how many times that people have come back to me and said, hey, we were going to use our friend who's a real estate agent, but we were thinking about it, and they kind of do it part-time, and they kind of, they're not as professional. We may not want them to know about our finance, whatever the case may be. In a lot of these scenarios, like if you're a realtor and somebody tells you that they're going to use their friend, don't let that scare you off from your follow-up process.
Just be helpful. And the excuse I hear most often is, I don't want my friend to know about my finances. That's the one I hear the most. There are people that will use their friends as a real estate agent. Yeah. It should happen. So you should work your friends.
No question.
Yeah. So you should stay in tune with what they're doing, with the actions that are happening in their life, so that you may use them. But a lot of times I will hear, I didn't want my friends to know how much money I made. And and just so you know, like for the people that are working their friend sphere, we can talk to the lender, but the lender's not supposed to be sharing information about your W-2 and whatnot. So do work your friends. Your friends are an option for you. But I do hear that a lot. If you come across it, it's a common objection. I don't want my friends to know how much money I make.
Yeah, no question. So one of the first things, and you're going to learn this about me if you haven't learned this about me already, I like to go into mindset first. Like I really truly believe like how you think about things or how you perceive things is going to sort of manifest in how you carry your actions out. And so the first thing is just to have the mindset of being a problem solver. So identifying yourself as like, I'm the person that can solve problems. I'm really good at solving problems. And my mentor, Michael Hyatt, says, you get paid the money you get paid because of the level of the problems that you solve. The higher level of problems you solve, the more money you make, period.
Yep.
And I would say, even that, like your progression, you sort of had this like, rocket ship progression in the corporate world. And I asked you about it one time. I was like, well, how do you How did you move so quickly up the rank? Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I take the mindset, since we're talking about mindset, of doing the job of the person above me. That's always how I've operated in my career. If I am now taking on the responsibilities of the person that I report to, I feel like I'm ready to take that next step. And I always worked as hard as I could to carry on those to take care of those responsibilities as fast as I could, showed my worth, and then I would make that next leap. And you're right. Like once you get to the top, in the corporate world that I was in, there was 50,000 employees, 40,000 employees, and you're responsible for a lot of sensitive information for 40,000 people. That's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
So that's the level of problem I was solving. But you're always trying to make sure that you can solve problems for the people around you and be that resource. But for me, it's more of a responsibility thing. Like I was taking care of things that weren't necessarily in my wheelhouse at that point, but that's where I wanted to go.
Yeah, take the responsibility. And I think, a lot of times people will shy away from that. Like take the responsibility to solve people's problems. Yes, there's some back and forth and you've got to have some, tact in the way that you handle situations. But ultimately, like you just need to have the mindset of like, I can figure out the solution to these problems, period. Right. And that's where I think, maybe realtors have trouble in gaining confidence, especially early on where they're like, well, I don't know anything yet. I don't know how to solve this particular problem. And so that's why I will say if your brokerage doesn't offer a mastermind, where you can have exposure to scenarios, you need to maybe join a coaching company or something like that where you get the ability to have exposure to scenarios so you can build up your confidence level and the ability to solve problems and have a place to go where you can get those, where you can have conversations about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just the mindset of like, I can solve these problems. I can find the solutions to anything. Okay. And then the other is like being a student of your craft, like knowing, okay, you're not going to be able to have the solutions overnight. You need to become a student of them. You need to become a student of the scenarios. You need to be coachable. You need to be humble. But at the same time with clients, you need to be able to project confidence and professionalism. And so this is kind of, what we call like the BS factor. You need to be able to BS a little bit, right? Or word things in a way that gives you the time to be able to go back and get the solution. And so, here's what I can tell you with my own confidence. I don't have the problems. At 15 years in this business, I'm a broker for 85 agents in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a CEO of a company with 150 agents in Texas and Oklahoma and Tennessee. I don't have the answers to everything.
No, this is part of being mayor of your town. Know where to find the answers.
Yeah,
we've talked about being the mayor of your town a lot, and there's many aspects of that. One of them is just knowing where to find answers to problems. And, and this is another thing that we coach, and I've coached people, professional development, agents, whatever. It's don't come to me and say, here's my problem. Come to me and say, here's my problem. Here's what I think I need to do. Here's another option that I could do. Can you help me? Can you guide me? And that at least lets me know, hey, you have a problem. You've thought about potential ways to solve it. And maybe I say, you know what? Neither of those options are very good. Here's what I would do.
Yeah.
But I have a little bit more respect for the fact that you've thought through the problem and you've at least tried to solve it. And I'm going to be more willing to help you. But if you come to me and you just say, hey, man, here's my problem. What do I do? I'm going to be like, this guy hasn't, or girl hasn't thought about any of this.
Right.
It just at least think it through.
Yeah. That's the whole thing is like, when people come to me with questions, one of the first things that I ask is, well, what do you think you should do?
Yes.
And if you come to me, I'm going to push back. What do you think you should do? And so people that have worked with me a long time, they'll come with me as like, I think I should do this. Is that okay? And probably 70 to 80% of the time, I'm like, yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Trust your instincts. Yep. That was totally the right solution. You're on the right track. It builds confidence in you to conceptualize. So the first thing that you need to do in sort of problem solving is conceptualize and figure out what you think you should do. And even if you have to write it down, what makes sense to you. And 80% of the time, that's the right answer.
You're going to become a better problem solver. I mean, it's problem solving and decision making is most of your life. It's your kids are doing something that you can't figure out and you need to work through, or something came up in your personal life or at work or at the office or whatever. Like, these are all problems and decisions that you have to make. So become better at it holistically for your life, not just for being a real estate agent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the other mindset that you want to have is like providing value. So in your follow-up process, or when you're following up with either a buyer or seller that you've met with or that you've interacted with, and you are you need to continue to make contact with them. You need to continue to stay top of mind with them, but you need to have this sort of mindset of providing value. So one of the things where I think that salespeople go wrong is they go, all right, well, I'm just checking in. I just want to check in, see if you need anything. And I'm like, that's going to do nothing. That is if you are just checking in, you're not really connecting. So if you have the mindset of providing value, it's like, think about like, what's a way that I can provide value or improve the quality of this person's life, whether it's their specific scenario with real estate or whether it's something completely different from real estate. And I think that's where realtors go wrong. They put too narrow a boundary or these sort of like, bookends on what kind of value that they can provide to a potential client. And one of the things that we were talking about before is like, hey, if I know your kids play soccer, and I know this isn't realistic, but if I know Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be in town,
my son would flip.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You'd win if he was, and I didn't know about it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I call you and I said, hey, there's a soccer camp that's going on. Cristiano Ronaldo is going to come, and I'm letting you know about it because I know your kids play soccer. That's providing value to you.
It's a perfect opportunity to reach out.
Yeah. So, I think we get a lot of times too narrow, which also sort of restricts. The other thing is we get restrictive about the questions that we ask. Like, you don't want to connect with someone just on their, just in the real estate lane. You want to connect with the whole person.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a good rule for life. It's like, don't marginalize people or put them in these little boxes in a way to connect with them. If you can add value to their life in any realm, and this is, again, back to sort of being the mayor. When you become a really, really, really good realtor, one of two things is going to happen, or no, both of these things are going to happen. One of them is you should see someone everywhere you go in town that you know, and say, hey, how are you? But the other thing is that people call you about stuff like advice.
That's not even necessarily real estate.
Well, yes, I need a pool guy. I need somebody to repair my sprinkler system. I need somebody to put a new roof on. Who do you use? So there's that part of it. But it's like, there are sort of all of these other areas of life that people should be reaching out to you about.
Restaurants, where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So
especially for Nashville, just 1 second on this. We have so many people moving from other states, whether it's California or whatever. They have no idea where to go in downtown Franklin to hang out on a Friday night. Offer value around those aspects as well, so that when they are in town and they're visiting and they go to a restaurant you suggested, and they're like, hey, RL suggested that, or Brandon suggested that it's creating, and we talked about this on other podcasts, reciprocity. Like, they feel obligated to you in some way because you shared something of value with them.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tell you one story in relation to that. So I had a client come to me last week. It was a referral, and they said, hey, so-and-so said I should reach out to you because we need to buy a house. We had a scenario pop up. We got to buy something. And but the person that referred me, all I did was they had already a house that they had or a piece of land that they put under contract for a build. They did not use me, but they asked my advice on it, and I gave them that advice for free.
Yep.
Like, I just said, yeah, absolutely. Let me help you with it. What do you need? Okay. Yep. This is right. Yeah. And so I answered questions for them. I provided them value, and it led to a referral. That's going to, be a $500,000 or $600,000 sale. So it's just about being that resource for people in multiple areas. And I would say that this is another place where I think realtors get a little crossways is like, well, I'm not going to give out that information for free, or you need to pay me for whatever. And if you get like really chintzy with your information or with your wisdom or with your knowledge or whatever, I think that's the wrong direction to take. I think you should be open with everyone. I think you should be willing to provide advice to everyone, even if they're not using you, on particular deals or whatever. Don't cross any boundaries from a code of ethics perspective. But I just think you need to be open with your knowledge, open with your wisdom, open with the information that you have, and share that with people and become a resource.
Yeah, lead with free value, and it'll come back to you.
Yeah. Another sort of limiting belief for realtors is that they think that they're a commodity. Okay. And that realtors think that like, hey, what am I going to do for this client that any of these realtors is not going to do? It's like, I don't, so that sort of seed can get planted and it can keep you from interacting with people in an appropriate way. So I would just say, you're not a commodity. You, as an individual realtor, are not a commodity. Yes, there are a lot of realtors out there, but 80% of realtors out there are not really doing very much at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pushing papers.
Yep. If that. You're really only dealing with so whatever the current real estate population is in your town, realtor population is in your town, you're only really sort of crossing paths with about 20% of that population. And then out of that, 20% that actually is active and out there doing things, there's 20% of that population that is doing it at a super high level.
Right.
So you as an individual agent are not a commodity as long as you are gaining knowledge, gaining wisdom, actually like becoming a student of your craft, like all of those things. When you really start to do the numbers, just because somebody has a real estate license doesn't mean they're a professional.
Absolutely not.
And so don't let that seed take root. That you're a commodity. You are not. You're the realtor that is a student. You're the realtor that is learning about their market. You're the realtor that is reading real estate material and books and continually gathering information to make yourself a professional. If you just like take or have the mindset and follow the path of gaining real estate information and being a student, you're going to be in the top 10%, period.
For sure.
So don't think of yourself as a commodity. You're a professional. So we talked about, let's see. Okay. So when you are following up, we talked about like not checking in, making sure you're asking great questions and connecting with someone's overall goal, right? Connecting with someone's like overall, whatever they're doing in their life, whatever they're doing in real estate, you need to connect with that and help them solve problems that are going to lead them down that path. And you need to ask questions that are around their timeline. So most people most people that you're going to be talking to are going to be somewhere between, we talked about this before. You've got aspirational people, you've got research people, and you've got transactional people. Okay. So your transactional people are the people that are needing to buy now, right? 0 to 6 months. The research people are sort of the 6 to 12 months. And then the aspirational are, an average of 12 months and beyond. Okay. So you're typically going to be talking to people that are in that sort of, are having regular conversation with people that are in that 6 to 12 month process.
Can we talk about one thing real quick?
Yeah.
I don't want to derail your thought process here, but you can help someone discover what pushes them from research to transactional. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what could you do, or what questions could you ask to potentially help them discover what might be that event that makes them a transactional buyer?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Give me a little bit of context.
Yeah. So we've talked about this some in the past, like it's staying engaged in solving problems, right? So if I'm a research buyer and right now I say, I really need to move, but the rates are too high. Like for me, this is an easy one for me. So it's like the rates are high. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I happen to think that we're going to see some fours, mid fours, high fours, low fives in the springtime. Competition is low right now. Sellers are making concessions. Let's go ahead and get you in that house where we might be able to get $15,000 worth of seller concessions, and let's refinance in the spring. That's maybe in that conversation, they may go back and they may have a discussion and be like, you know what, it is the right time to buy. And now they've moved from research to transaction. That's one example, but there's lots of examples out there. Like if maybe their son is going to start school in 2 years and they think, well, let's wait for 2 years. But you and I know, hey, the market's going to pick back up in the spring when the rates drop.
Yep.
So maybe let's have that discussion. Like there's all these things that people have misconceptions about the market, or they may think something's an absolute truth and it's not. So it's continuing to have discussions and solve problems to move them from one stage to another.
Yeah.
I think that can happen. Now, a lot of times they need to discover on their own what is that life event that will push them into transactional buyer.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you can help them get there.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people will, you're right, adopt a mindset that they feel like they need to wait because X, Y, or Z. But the reality of it is like, well, I think you need to be comfortable as an agent challenging people tactfully.
Yeah, we talked about that right before the podcast. This is a perfect example. So somebody comes to you and says, "I'm not ready to buy. I'm gonna buy next summer." Don't just take that as fact and move on and don't follow up with them for 6 months. You've got a piece of information now. Figure out why they think that's true. Why are you not moving until the summer? And you don't just come at them with all these like direct questions and then they get defensive. Yeah. It has to be. You just said tact. It has to be tactful. But let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what might you say to someone who says something?
Yeah,
like
if
that?
somebody was say, it's like, hey, I think we're going to wait till next summer until the rates drop. I'm going to say, well, let me ask you the question before we kind of make that final decision. Why do you say that? Why are you making that decision? And a lot of times they're going to be like, well, we think the rates are going to drop. Well, okay, so here's the other thing that happens when rates drop. There's going to be more competition. So we could be back in multiple offer scenarios. The better decision might be to go ahead and purchase a home now and then refinance later. Because let's say you make $250 more payment right now for the next 6 months, right? Because you need about 6 months before you can refi. So we're going to pay, what is that?
$1,500
more in payments. We can refi. Right, and then we're going to be back to right. Instead of having to pay $10,000 over the asking price in 6 months, let's pay $1,500 more in payments in the meantime until rates are projected to decrease,
and probably get some seller concessions now that they wouldn't have gotten. So let's say you get $15,000 for repairs, and you pay a little bit more for the rate for the next 6 months. So we said $1,500. So you get $15,000 and then you lose $1,500 over the next 6 months.
Yeah.
You're still way ahead.
Exactly. So I think it's appropriate to challenge people tactfully in their thought process, because they're gathering information from, all news or, their friend down the street. And it's okay to be the professional to challenge them and say, you know what, you sort of want to think opposite of what the market is doing, right? In terms of like, when the stock market plummets, that's when you want to buy stock, right? Because it's on sale.
Yeah.
Right. That's sort of like, Warren Buffett mindset. So when everybody's telling you X, Y, Z, let's rethink this. Let's think about where the opportunity is. And I would think the thing to do is to challenge your clients appropriately, be the lighthouse and show them the way and where the opportunity is in the market.
And oftentimes too, there might be a research buyer that doesn't know programs exist. Like I just taught a mortgage class the other day, and a lot of people don't know that 2-to-1 buy downs or 3-2-1 buy downs exist. So if your buyer doesn't know it exists, whose fault is that?
Right.
It's your fault because you didn't ask any questions to figure out what their true objection was to moving right now. And if it's just rate, then we can overcome that in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
So it's if if you're letting them sit in a research phase and not providing them with information that they didn't have, that's your fault. So, it's learn to ask better questions, learn to ask more questions, learn to really probe about what's truly holding them up, because in some cases it might be a false reality.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to be the professional. Don't be afraid to project confidence in what you know. And you need to be able to, and you also need to put yourself in circles where you're gathering this information and continually learning so that you can take that information and be the lighthouse for people. Because look, we probably covered this before, but in almost all scenarios, right, people are going to use a real estate agent. Who are they going to use? They're going to use the person who provided them the most value and stayed top of mind, period.
Yep.
So there's this process of becoming that agent. And by the way, the other thing that I'll just sort of restate that we said in the previous podcast is don't feel like you've got to learn everything before you take action. Go ahead and take action because you're in the environment of knowledge, of information, of wisdom. Don't be afraid to share what you know, even though you may not have 10 years in the business now.
Yeah. And perfect example of that would be, like, let's say you didn't know about some of those loan programs, but you really wanted to reconnect with this buyer that's in the research phase. Reach out and say, hey, I've got a great lender. Hopefully you have good partners wherever you are. I've got a great lender that can talk to you about some of these options. Let's have a conversation. Let's let them fill you in on the products that are available right now. And then guess what? They have a conversation with that lender. They walk away with some information of value. And now they feel obligation to you because you were the one that provided them with that person. So you don't have, to Brandon's point, you don't have to know all the information. You have to know where to find it.
That's right.
And I wanted to say that before we were kind of moving on, but like you need to be the mayor of your town by knowing where to find information or how to solve problems for everybody and everything because you know where to find the answer. You don't have to know all the answers yourself. You just have to know where to find the answer.
That's a critical, like I would just say for life, that's a critical like awareness is that you are never going to know everything you need to know. You just need to be able to know where to find the information.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that don't like someone who's a know-it-all. That's a kind of a childish way to say it, but they don't like someone who's a know-it-all. So like if you approached me and said, hey, what do I do about this? And you could maybe reply and say, hey, you know what? I haven't encountered that lately, but Brandon deals with that all the time. And I'm going to go talk to him and I'm going to follow back up with you.
Yeah.
That you sound humble and you sound like you're willing to help someone and you sound like you know a lot of resources. You know a lot of people that have a lot of resources. So you don't always have to say, well, you just do this and happen to be wrong. Like you can say, I'm not sure, but I know somebody who knows the answer.
Yeah. Be honest.
Yeah.
Right. People appreciate that because guess what? They are this exact same way. Right. They have problems that they don't know all the answers to and they need resources. Yep. And so I think that sort of path to finding the answer is the best one, right? It's just to say, like, I don't know, but I can find the answer for you. I don't know, but I know the person who does. I think that's the better way to handle the scenario.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's sort of recap on this. And I know we were sort of like broad with this, and we'll probably get a little more technical in an upcoming episode. But just basically, a lot of this was about mindset and solving problems and follow-up. So just again, make sure you have the mindset of being a problem solver. Make sure you have the mindset of providing value. Like you are providing solutions to problems. You're providing a value as a real estate agent, right? You're helping them improve their life, even if it's outside of real estate. And rather than just having that sort of mindset of like, hey, I'm just checking in with that. How are things going? Like actually come back to them with some sort of value. Again, all of these things are reciprocal, right? If you do this at a high level, you provide value at a high level, that's going to come back to you.
And we kind of told a little bit of a story about how to follow up. Like maybe there's a soccer camp and you thought you could share it with it as an excuse to follow up. I'm going to tell one story about follow-up. And if you're a 10 Oaks agent and you've heard this story like 26 times now, I'm sorry. But I think it's important. It's applicable.
Yeah.
I tell this story way too often, but I feel that everyone needs to hear it. Don't take someone not responding to your follow-up as
Yes.
it's not important.
Yep.
You can send an email to someone 26 times when it's not important to them at that moment and they don't respond. But the moment that it is, you'll get a response and they'll remember you for it. So here's a story from my previous life. I was in a situation where I was getting thousands of emails a day, all about different products or different offerings that all of these salespeople thought would be important to me. There's too many to respond to. I'm literally getting thousands a day for thousands of different products. I read the subject lines and who they're from. So my brain logs the fact that Brandon has followed up with me about a cybersecurity product 36 times this last month. So, but I'm deleting them, right? But guess what? The minute that I am in my CIO seat and I need this particular cybersecurity product, and I remember Brandon's followed up with me 36 times, guess who I'm reaching out to?
That's right.
Brandon. I mean, you always want the path of least resistance. So I'm not going to go making cold calls for people who sell cybersecurity products to try to find the right one. I'm going to reach out to the person that's reached out to me 36 times. That's what I'm going to do. It's human nature. So if you're in somebody's inbox or sending them texts about soccer camps and you've been doing that for the last 6 months for your research buyers, guess who they're going to reach out to when they now need an agent? When they just found out they're pregnant and they've got to move because their house is too small, or they just found out that mom and dad are too sick and need to move back in. Whatever it is, they're going to remember you. So be that person. Be that person that has followed up so many times and kept getting deleted, but now you're the one that they need. They're going to reach out to you. So just remember that. Just remember that, hey, just because I've been sending emails and haven't heard a word for 6 months that I'm not important, don't think that's true.
Yeah, I think the maybe harsher way to say it is quit getting your feelings hurt because people don't call you back.
Exactly.
Just continue to follow up. It doesn't, take your emotions out of it. Just see it as marketing, right? And I promise you, if you do this with enough consistency, people are going to reach out to you, period, when it's time.
The only time I would ever say to stop following up is if somebody gets aggressive, because that's not worth your time.
Right.
You don't deserve that, and you can walk away from that, and you don't need that. So if somebody says, do not send me another email or else, or something like that, then
I'm going to call my attorney.
Okay, you don't need that in your life because quite frankly, it probably wouldn't be much fun of a transaction process anyway. So walk away from that. But if they're not doing that, if they're just, blank stares, keep following up.
Yep, agreed. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We are going to talk to you next week. Have a great Thanksgiving. Talk to you soon.
Yep, thanks.